Welcome back to Circle City Conversations. This episode is part one of our year-end compilation, highlighting some of the most impactful conversations, powerful moments, and meaningful insights we've shared throughout the year. As the year comes to a close and the holiday season is upon us, we wanted to take a moment to reflect on some of our favorite moments on the podcast. From in-depth legal discussions to personal stories and community voices, these moments helped shape everything Circle City Conversations stands for. As Christmas approaches, this episode is our way of saying thank you to our guests, our listeners, and everyone who has been a part of our journey this year. So take a moment and settle in as we revisit some of the conversations that made this year unforgettable. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. This is Circle City Conversations, Best of the Year, Part 1.
If it's someone who's passed, the families don't understand why this keeps happening. It's very difficult to explain to people why it's taking so long, why we have to keep starting over when their loved one or they themselves were the victim of the thing.
Yeah.
And the question I often get is, why is it that the physician gets all the benefit of the system and the victim is the one that is jumping through all the hoops? And I think it's really hard for us to explain. And it's hard to explain, particularly if you have a case that's going to be going to the fund, why a physician is allowed to even pay less than the cap too. So Indiana has in their statute that to be able to advance a medical malpractice case to the patient's compensation fund, stage three, you can do it in a variety of payment options, one lump sum, or you can do it with annuities.
Yeah.
Well, if that option is given, that's usually the highest offer we get, right? So we have to make a decision. Do we want to go to trial on this, or do we want to depending on what the cap is at the time, because it's on a sliding scale now. Do we want to take, if it's a 1.65 cap, we'll say, then the doctor's liability is limited to $400,000.
Yeah.
They can issue an annuity for $300,001.
Their carrier.
Their carrier. Yeah. Because it's not them either. So, right, you're never really holding the person accountable that did the thing.
Yeah.
And as Katie mentioned earlier, the idea we think behind it was to keep doctors in the state. But, what, and don't have like a generalization again. I don't have a bias against all doctors, but I do think that what it's led to is that Indiana definitely has more bad doctors in this state because there really isn't real accountability for them should they have a mistake.
Right.
Because other states don't have these protections or limitations.
And they don't always.
Got a 250 cap is what I heard.
I think that just recently had some sort of amendment.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of states, but I think their cap is only on non-economics.
Okay.
So Indiana has a cap that covers both economic and non-economic damages. So you could have, say, a baby has a birth injury,
Yeah.
and their life care plan is going to be $15 million. The cap is still 1.85 if it happens tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't provide for the care they're going to need along their lifetime, which is it's very frustrating on our side because we can't ever get a full recovery for them, one. And the second thing it does is it shifts the burden of the cost of their care to the state and the taxpayers because those kids are now going to have to be on Medicaid waiver almost their entire life once the money runs out.
So as a female entrepreneur and a lawyer, if you could give a piece of advice to a young lawyer thinking about starting their own practice, what would you say to them?
You definitely have confidence in yourself. I didn't have a plan B. My plan A was I'm going to be successful, and that's it. And I always share this story. So Laura and I were at Barcelona Tapas when it used to be open. And we had a meeting back in 2007, and we had to figure out how much we needed on a piece of paper to survive to not live in our parents' basement, which their parents had a very nice house. So I wasn't too worried about it, but we had a number, right? It just $8,000 a month what we needed. And now I need close to $100,000 a month. And so it just, I'm believe in yourself, have confidence, look for mentors. I didn't really have that. I kind of just did it on my own and I winged it. But I had a teammate, right? So I had a paralegal who had been a paralegal for a while, and she had good business sense. And so I had, even though we couldn't partner, I did have that support. So I think if you're going to go on your own, is if you're in family law or in an area, have a good, strong paralegal with you. It is worth every dime. Get an SBA loan so you can pay him or her, because that's the person that's going to keep your practice flowing. You cannot do everything yourself. Don't be cheap. You pay people good, and you cannot have you answering the phones and trying to go get that loan so that you can, take care of yourself and your clients.
Exactly.
And ask questions and be really involved in your community. So I was involved with the Indie Bar and sat on a board, the foundation board, and get to know people, go to events. You are the product, like I said earlier. You have to be out there, but get a loan so you can pay someone, get a good paralegal to work with you, have confidence in yourself, network. And the more people you know, the more they'll refer things to you. And then make sure that you're doing a good job, because if you hurt yourself early in your career, it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah, you're never going to be able to build a successful practice if you're doing bad legal work.
Right. Don't feel like it's take everything that walks through the door. Be picky and be smart. And all of that should really be in a class, but it's hard. It's really hard.
We should call Karen Bravo and ask her. That would be great. That would be an amazing class.
It is. There's so many things that you have to think about.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful also with malpractice. Got to have a good relationship with your malpractice carrier. Run things by. Ask questions. Before John Trimble passed away recently, which we were so sad to see him go, he was always available for a phone call. Always. James Bell. Always. All those folks are happy to answer anything. So reach out to people before you make a mistake.
What are some of the kind of pivotal growth moments that you've had here at Tinker House?
Pivotal. I think that I've always been a build the plane while you're flying it kind of entrepreneur. I wouldn't advise that for a lot of folks, but I learn best by doing.
Yeah.
And I also learn even better by making mistakes. And so maybe I'm blessed or privileged or just have a little bit more rope than I should, because I've been able to kind of stay up in the build and growth mode. But I think some of the pivotal growth moments are some of my failures.
You learned so much.
And to be honest with you, I don't know if I would have learned them as well if I didn't fail and grow, versus maybe reading about it in a book or just saying, I believe you, whoever you are, do it this way type of advice. And I'm sure that works for a lot of people, but those are probably some of that bigger parts. Made some miscalculations on directions of the organization. I like to make sure that we're hiring a lots of different people, but like people come with its own challenges, and so we've grown through just the people in and out of the business over the years. That part, I would say, is probably been the biggest growth, personally and professionally. You just learn how to you treat people how you want to be treated,
right?
But you learn how to treat them better when you know more people and all the shit that they've been going through.
Yeah.
Because I'm just one person who just has one, version of life. There's so much out there that you don't know, and you would never know unless you walked a second, let alone a mile in these people's shoes. So they've taught me a lot more than I've taught them. I'll tell you that.
Oh gosh, when we're there on April the 3rd, Alex, I'm already into the Odin angle. Like it's right when I am discovering the Odin stuff, it's maybe 2 to 3 weeks, maybe about that time frame earlier. I'm talking about mid-March time frame. I started finding all the Odin stuff I was picking through and finding this stuff. And I'm trying to tell Brad, Rosie, and Brad and I are different in a lot of ways. And one way is I'm willing to think about the conspiracy side, and Brad is too. He's open-minded, but he's not willing. You got to really prove it to him, okay? And so the Odin stuff was going on for roughly, I'd say 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks. I'm trying to convince Brad of it, and that this is a real thing. This is not. There really is the possibility that Odinism was involved here, and Brad's kind of, he's not giving me the Heisman completely, but he's like, you got to be able to prove that better. And that's one of the reasons that he and I worked well together, is because, he would push back, and I need that. And I would push back to him too. And we respect each other, love each other now. And you're not even going to believe this if you haven't heard this. So April the 3rd, we're in there with Richard Allen, talking to Richard. And he's not making any sense. And like I said earlier, he's talking about, oh, my wife, is she okay? Is she okay? That kind of thing. And Brad's getting irritated, and I'm like, what is going on here? That was also the first day, by the way, that they had brought Richard Allen with these 2 new guards that I had never seen before. Now, maybe they had brought them over before, but he's shackled like Hannibal Lecter, and he's walking in, and these guys, and they're videotaping. They're videotaping this, and that's never happened before. So I'm looking at 2 guards that I've never seen before. I'm not saying that they hadn't brought them over. I just had never noticed them until that day. And I never had seen them videotaping, but they're videotaping him all the way up until we go into this little room. And then when we finally decide to leave, and there's a lot of things that I could talk about that are, I think, of interest. We wanted to call Kathy and put her on a speakerphone to let Richard know that she was alive. Richard did not believe us. He thought she was dead or that something had happened to her. So I went out and talked to the captain, and I said, I've got my phone here. Can I call Kathy right now, and it'll calm him down? I think it's a smart thing to do. Let me go back and talk to the warden. Well, he comes back. Nope, can't do it. Okay. Well, finally we give up. We can't get any heads or tails. We don't know what's going on with Richard. So we're ready to leave. So here come these guards videotaping. As they're walking down, they're videotaping. They're not even with Richard yet, and they're videotaping on their way down to talk to us. They get close, and I look at them, and they're wearing patches on their DOC uniform.
Yeah.
Their name is on the right side.
Yeah.
The right side. And on the left, there was a patch that said, and you're not even going to believe me, "In Odin we trust."
In Odin we trust.
In Odin we trust. And there was the symbol, one of the symbols of Odinism is this interlocking triangles, 3 triangles. And there was that as well. In Odin we trust was these interlocking triangles. And I just looked at that, and as we're heading down...
Was Brad with you?
Brad was with me. And as we're headed down the hallway, I had to say, "Hey, Brad, look at their patch. Look at the patch on the left side. Holy crap." And we get down to the end of the hallway, and the captain is there. And up until this day, we had been treated like royalty when we had been to Westville. Okay.
Yeah.
They rolled out the red carpet for us. We had, because it's this decrepit old freaking dungeon that they put Rick in, and others as well, is way at the back of the property. We had to take the equivalent of a golf cart, like a gator or whatever they're called. And they always treated us nice. They always gave us kind of the first class accommodations. We were always allowed to bring our phones in. And so when we went, after we saw these guys with Odin patches on their bodies, Brad said, "What's going on with those?" Brad's a very blunt guy. Like Brad,
He'll say it.
Brad will just say whatever, and and I'm more like strategic. Like I want to is it wise to do that or not? And it suits both of us very
Right.
well. Like it's who he is. He's a genuine, authentic guy. And Brad says, "What's going on with these Odin patches? What's going on there? Are they allowed?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. That's the captain. He's the head of that. I think he was the head of it." And he all of a sudden, in my opinion, takes an attitude. Well, then I walk over to one of those guys. They dropped Richard off. We walked right behind them. That's when I'm whispering to Brad. Brad sees them as they peel off. He sees the Odin patch. They go take Richard to his cell, and then we're talking to the captain. And then I see one of those guys walking down the hallway. One of the two guys wearing the Odin patches was walking down the hallway, and I chased after him. And I said, "Hey, I got a question for you, man. What does that patch mean? In Odin we trust." And he looked at me and he said, "That is I'm going to forget the exact wording, but that is a pagan. It's a pagan religion. He's a pagan god." And I said, "Oh, okay. What's going on with that?" And he wouldn't say anything. And then he just left. I don't remember the exact phrase, but he said it's a pagan god. And I was like, okay. So then we get in the car, and my mind's blown. I'm like, 3 or 4 weeks before, again, I had just started noticing that they were, not noticing, I realized they were investigating Odinism as a possible explanation for the sticks on the girls and the F in the tree.
Yeah.
On the bark of the tree. And now I see these "In Odin We Trust" patches. Is this real? Am I in a movie? I mean, is this really happening? And we thought that they would lie about that, because the next time we saw them, the Odin patches were no longer there.
They were gone.
They were gone.
What is one piece of advice you'd give a young lawyer now, young plaintiff's attorney, that you wish you would have gotten when you were younger?
Actually, I got the advice.
You did?
Yeah, and it was a senior partner that sat me down and he said, "Assume the best piece of evidence you could possibly want in the case, a smoking gun,
Yeah.
and assume it exists and ask questions as if it exists and dig for it. Because if you don't ask for it, if you don't look for it, you're not
Right.
going to find it." And all too often, sadly, we find the smoking gun. The corporation knew what it was doing,
Yeah.
and they chose to do it anyway.
Right. Right. It's just kind of like ask for what you want, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And assume the worst
Yeah.
and ask what you want. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, majority of the time, it proves to be accurate.
Right.
Why do you think that focus groups are so relevant or important, especially in the personal injury realm?
They are especially important in the personal injury realm. I also think they're probably pretty important in the criminal defense realm
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Because as attorneys, we get focused in on what we think the issues are or what we think are the important things. But until you can actually hear from a jury, which you're not getting that feedback live and in court,
Right.
you're not going to know what they think is important.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing, is like, you can totally think you got the best case ever and you'll go and try it and lose it. Or you'll go and send it to a focus group and go, I have to adjust.
Yes.
And it can really change how you present the case. And really, I mean, I've known attorneys that have focus group cases 10, 15 times because they were big enough cases to do that. But even if you can just do it once, you're going to get so much invaluable information.
Oh yeah. I've heard some lawyers say, especially when it comes to affordable focus groups like this, if you're going to go try a case, you should at least do one affordable online or in-person focus group.
Absolutely. I would say that too.
Yeah.
I think the other benefit of getting up and doing a focus group is it's your time as a lawyer to practice your skills.
Yes.
And especially in the realm of voir dire, jury selection, being able to talk to strangers and pull information out of them is such a skill. And you see attorneys that do it really well and you see other attorneys that aren't doing it so well, but everyone has the ability to get to that really good level.
Yeah.
And the focus group gives you that opportunity to improve on that skill.
You can be a trial lawyer without, going to trial 5 times a year, without doing 40 trials in a couple of years. Because there are different purposes and different skill sets that people have. There's people that just simply are not going to be great public speakers. They're not going to have that personality that, when you're talking to a jury, you got to talk to them like they're your neighbors, like they're your friends. And that's just how you have to talk. And some people you can't do that. And I've seen that a lot with people I've gone against in trial. You can't, you can't connect. But some of them, even ones that have that issue, they're great on finding the little minutia within a medical record or their motion practice or, cutting into arguments. So I see it both ways. In my opinion, I think everyone should try a lot of cases. Yeah. I think that's what should make a trial lawyer. But I think you can definitely be a trial lawyer and a good one that can achieve a lot for your clients if, you're not the greatest in court, potentially. I think there's a lot of different factors that go into something like I'm sure some lawyers may think I'm a bad trial lawyer. Who knows? Right. Who knows?
Right. They'll never tell you that, though.
No.
Right? Anytime somebody comes and watches you in trial, I always ask them afterwards, how was my opening? How was this? Oh, it was great. It was great. And it's not always perfect.
No. It's never perfect.
But everybody's going to tell you it was awesome.
Really, in my opinion, what makes a great trial lawyer is they are never perfect. Because if you are perfect, you are creating a presentation instead of telling a story.
That particular case, that is an interesting case, right?
Absolutely.
Because of what happened in that case. Tell me a little bit more about what happened.
Right. I won't get too deep into it because I can get hyper technical, but I won't do that. Essentially, a very large parcel distribution company here in Indiana, who also, we were talking about independent contractors previously, who also employs a lot of 1099 what they call independent contractors. And to make a long story short, a gentleman was going to a distribution center here in Indiana as a 1099 employee, independent contractor, and he was completely confused as to how he was supposed to get into this distribution center because the signage was telling him one thing, his GPS was telling him another, the distribution center had told him a completely different thing, and he was very confused. So he ended up getting out of his truck, and he was hit by another company or another contractor that was going a different way. And he passed away, unfortunately. So his estate sued, and come to find out from different sources that this exact scenario had occurred on the exact same road, almost in the exact place, like a month before this.
Oh, wow.
And the company that was sued said basically, well, we had no idea this was going to happen. How could we foresee that this was going to happen? And the case law in Indiana is always talking about foreseeability and how could we see that this was foreseeable? And it's like, well, it happened a month before this happened. So how are you guys suggesting that it wasn't foreseeable? And apparently there had been all kinds of there were statements about this happens all the time. People have to stop and get out and ask for directions and try to figure this out. So it's just very, it's kind of insane for this company to suggest, hey, we had no idea this was going on when this had happened a month before and people had been making comments about how it was very difficult to figure this out. So that's where the case is right now. In Hamilton County, it had been filed, and the court had dismissed it, saying that it was completely there's no foreseeability here, and had not allowed the parties to do discovery. And the appellate court, thankfully, said no. We're going to let the parties do some discovery, and we're gonna let the case go forward. So we're just waiting to see what the Supreme Court is going to do now.
So let's talk a little bit about SQ Law. The SQ Law, they're known for strong advocacy, client-centered approach. So what drew you specifically to that firm, and how has working there kind of shaped your career?
Sure. Well, I first got to meet Chris when I was a prosecutor,
Yeah.
and I had cases, with him. I remember having an OVWI case, operating a vehicle while intoxicated case, with him and going to his office. And I just really liked his office. I liked the atmosphere there. It didn't feel like a stuffy law firm. It felt like it just felt very comfortable. And I remember just really I thought he was very smart. I liked the work he did. I just thought his mission of helping people aligned with mine. And then coincidentally, I'm just so fortunate, when I was living in Lake County, he contacted me and asked if I was interested in coming aboard and starting at his firm. And I was very interested in learning more to see if it was a good fit, because I already knew of him, based on criminal cases I had with him. And I think it's really a big deal to say, if you're working in an opposing counsel relationship, and if you have respect for the person on the other side, if you admire them,
Yes.
that really, I think, speaks volumes. And it was, I think, a great opportunity for me to come on board. He didn't know that I'd been doing civil defense the entire time.
Really?
Yes, I think we just lost track. And he wanted to know if I wanted to do family law and criminal defense. But then I said, hey, have you ever thought about maybe starting a personal injury practice? And he had mentioned he had thought about it, but he wasn't quite sure, who could come aboard and handle that. And then we decided that would be kind of what my long-term goal at the firm would be. And I'm so fortunate it worked out the way it did.
Do you have an opportunity to they try cases there, lots, the criminals. Let's talk about the criminals.
Sure, yes.
Sure. So do you have an opportunity to work with them on some of the trial prep and stuff like that? There's some similar skills, lots of overlap there.
Yeah, there's similar skills. And sometimes people will come, because I have that background of being a prosecutor. Sometimes people will come to my office and be like, hey, want your thoughts about this or that. Mm-hmm. For the most part, do they do that on a daily basis? No, absolutely not. But sometimes it just helps pick other people's brains. I think sometimes if somebody is in a case and they're so focused on the case, it's nice to get an outsider's perspective, or maybe somebody who, doesn't do criminal work to get their perspective. I have, they've asked me if I wanted to sit maybe second chair on a couple of jury trials. And my thought process is absolutely. I don't want to lose those skills.
Yeah.
And just having, understanding the rules of evidence is such an important skill that you can use, civil or criminal. And that's one of, actually, I'd probably say the most important thing that I learned at the prosecutor's office is mastering the rules of evidence. And I've been able to apply that and feel very comfortable in a courtroom and making objections and understanding how to admit evidence. And that is so critical. So I don't want to lose that. I never want to lose that.
They were investigating heavily Odinism, Norse paganism, and according to Jerry Holman, who's the lead detective on it, once the Purdue professor cast his vote on this was not a cult, this was not anything Odinistic or Norse paganist, we just moved on. That's how important that Purdue professor was to them, they claim, yet they did not know and they could not identify who it is, the state police. All right. Well, what Nick McClellan did not know was going on at that very time as I was writing the Franks memo. And in the Franks memo, I called them out completely for claiming that they weren't able to identify the Purdue professor. I included Nick McClellan's email saying, how can it be? This is the most preposterous thing. It's laughable. It's embarrassing. And if there wasn't a guy, in my opinion, falsely accused of murder, this would be laughable. But it's tragic. It really is that they're not allowing us to figure out who this Purdue professor is. It caused me to think, did the Purdue professor really say that this was an Odinism? I'll get you to the end of the story there. He didn't say that. And it seems to me that that's why they were trying to hide the Purdue professor from us. So on September the 18th, the Franks memo is filed, and until the judge shut it down and she put a seal on it so nobody could see it. But for about 2 hours or so, it was out there for the world to see. And, that's when the Purdue professor, the world knew that there was a missing Purdue professor. Okay. That's on September the 18th. what was it, 12 days earlier, they weren't able to find it for the month and a half, and they may never be able to find it. So now the September 18th out, and there had to be complete, I would love to have been a fly on the wall in Jerry Holman's office when that Frank's memo came out for a variety of reasons, but particularly as it relates to the Purdue professor and Nick McClelland's as well. Because when that happened, they had to be like, oh my God, it's only a matter of time before the Purdue professor comes out of the woodwork and says, hey, that's me. Or somebody says, oh, I know the guy. He told me that he was working on that. And so lo and behold, Alex, September the 19th, the very next day, they find the Purdue professor that they could not find for a month and a half. The day that it comes out, the day after it comes out there, they find the Purdue professor. And you should have heard the interview because they sent the audio over, which I'm kind of surprised because it seemed, when you hear it, and I hope the Court of Appeals listens to it, you hear Jerry Holman interviewing this guy, and it's almost like a cross-examination. Like, now you remember that it was totally leading questions. You didn't believe there was any Odinism going on there, right? I mean, there was other, you didn't think that meant anything, right? I mean, and he's like, that's not what I didn't say that. It definitely could be it could have been, I can't remember the exact words. It was likely a Germanic runic script. Oh, well, no, are you sure about that? And then when you saw the report, and they still didn't send me the report right away. I had to ask and beg for that, and I didn't get that until October of 2024. But in his report at the very beginning, this is the report that they say that the police say caused them, the police, to go off the trail of these Odinists and these Norse paganists and move on to something else, is because of this report. Because the report says clearly that this is not Odinism. First paragraph of the report. Although I can't really be sure what this is, it is quite plausible. That's the phrase, quite plausible that this was a Germanic runic script. It's the exact opposite of what Jerry Holman said in his deposition. That's called, that's sworn statement. That's a sworn statement by Jerry Holman. I'm sure the state police are investigating him for perjury right now. I'm sure that is happening, okay? Because he lied under oath. Jerry Holman lied under oath when he said that the Purdue professor said that this was not a cult or anything Norse paganist. And then you take that fact that he didn't tell accurate information. To be generous, I'll say he didn't tell accurate information, Jerry Holman. But you take that and then you look into, well, why is it that they could not find the Purdue professor? It's because they didn't want us to know that. That's the most likely scenario. And I can't tell you how incredibly troubling that is, because now you have a prosecutor out there who sent me an email. Why is he sending me an email? Then later on we learned that they did know who the Purdue professor was in the mid to late August.
Wow.
We found a report that said that, and Nick McClelland never. Here's what Nick McClelland, and this is again in the real world, in the normal world, Nick McClelland calls you up and says, "Hey, I know you've been wanting to talk to the Purdue professor. We finally found who it is. I know that the Frank's memo just came out, and it seems kind of weird that we just kind of found him out of the blue, but we just did. And I want to apologize, man, because I should have been able to find that out. Nothing like that. This is the normal. Normal is so far out of whack on this case that you start to lose perspective.